Okay, hello everyone. My name is Ayesha Samar. I'm a neuroscience major in the College of Natural and Agricultural Sciences.
Hi, my name is Taylor Martin Del Campo, and I am a recent graduate of psychology from the College of Humanity, Arts, and Social Sciences. And as they mentioned before, our project is called Association Between Demographic Variables and Engagement in Positive Reframing during the COVID-19 pandemic and the Black Lives Matter movement.
So Taylor and I are research assistants in the Observe Lab at UCR. Our faculty mentor is Dr. Megan Robbins, and Chandler Spar is a graduate student in her lab. So our lab mainly focuses on social interactions between couples. We use a device called electronically activated recorder, which records conversations and ambient sounds from the participants' environment, and we then code them. So last year during the stay-at-home orders, Professor Robbins, she sent out a questionnaire online and asked people to describe their experiences with COVID-19 and the Black Lives Matter movement. So her question, and then she had an open-ended question at the end of her questionnaire, which asked people to describe their experiences as well as talk about any positive aspects that they had during this time.
And so, a brief overview, as Aisha mentioned, we do use the ear for naturalistic observation, which in turn negates the need for self reports. However, with this research project, we did need to rely on self reports from the participants that were involved in this study. However, in the future, the Observe Lab does plan to use pre COVID ear data and as well as the self reports in order to continue with the research that we are doing right now. And so our interests are looking at the ways that people have experienced COVID-19 and also how they have positively reframed throughout this time. And then we also want to understand the demographic variables that have the potential to influence a participant's ability to positively reframe. And so, some background about our study is that positive reframing is a cognitive process where individuals have perceived a negative event but have been able to put a positive spin on it. And this actually helps people manage adverse life experiences and different stressful situations that they may come across. And so, we thought this was very interesting to look at during the COVID-19 pandemic and also the civil rights movement. Additionally, we wanted to investigate different demographic variables that include employment, income, and parental status to see how that can affect one's ability to engage in positive reframing. And so our current study had two main goals, which included examining how people positively reframed during the pandemic, as well as the civil rights movement, and then also understanding which demographic variables are associated with engagement in positive reframing. So to talk about our methods, we had 40 participants respond to this online open-ended questionnaire, which they talked about their experiences during the COVID-19 pandemic and the BLM movement. And so out of the 40 participants, 22 engaged in positive reframing. And so from there, 4 coders independently looked at their responses and decided whether they were engaging in positive reframing. And from that standpoint, we categorized them into 3 categories, which included strengthened relationships, personal growth, and new opportunities.
So for our results, as Taylor mentioned, we wanted to look at the correlation between different demographic variables and positive reframing. So the first thing we analyzed was the type of positive reframing that people engaged in. So we found that 22.5% participants that engaged in positive reframing used strengthened relationships during the pandemic, and 17.5 participants saw the pandemic as a way for personal growth, and 25% people engaged in positive reframing via finding new opportunities. So the next variable we looked at was the correlation between gender and whether people engaged in positive reframing or not. And we found that 73% of the participants that engaged in positive reframing were women and 27% were men. Next, we looked at employment status and engagement in positive reframing. So we found that 13.6% of the participants that we saw were engaging in positive reframing were unemployed, and 13.6% were retired. And then we found that 72.7% of the participants were employed. Next, we looked at income and engagement in positive reframing. So we found that 4.5% of the people engaging in positive reframing were in the low income range, 36.4% were in the middle income range, and the majority of the participants that engaged in positive reframing were from the high income range. Last, we looked at the number of children and how that affected engagement in positive reframing. And we found that 21.4% of the participants had one kid, 50% of them had two kids, and 28.6% of them had three kids, and none of the participants that engaged in positive reframing had more than three kids. So this is our special stats page. We do not have any new information on this page. We would just want to reiterate the important things that we thought was important in our results section. So we just wanted to highlight these numbers. For example, like how many of the participants were employed who engaged in positive reframing and so on. So from our results, we found that the most common way that participants reframed was through finding new opportunities. And this was different from what we predicted. We predicted that it was going to be through strengthened relationships, but that was not the case. And then we also found that women engaged in positive reframing more than men, and so do employed people positively reframe more. We also found that middle to high income people engaged in positive reframing more, and people who did not have a change in their income. Lastly, we found that people with children engaged in positive reframing more than people who did not.
And so for our limitations and our future research, the impact of relationships and how it affected reframing. Since the Observe Lab is focused on couples and their social interactions, this is something we would like to look at in the future. Next, our limitation of our study is that we used only descriptive analysis, and so further research is going to be needed to explain why these demographic variables influence positive reframing in the way that they do. And then another thing that we would like to investigate is how positive reframing can remain an effective tool, and if it is an effective tool. This study was done at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, and so we want to see as the pandemic progressed and continued and it changed, if positive reframing was still an effective way to manage stress and cope throughout this situation. And then lastly, as I touched base on in the second bullet point, we really do want to identify which demographic variables increase the likelihood of engagement in positive reframing. And so our future research is going to be focused on that. And then these are some of the references that we used within our study. If you would like to read any of these papers, we have also included the links for you as well.
So this is our poster. We went over this in our slides, but we just wanted to show it to all of you in a concise manner. And so this was our presentation. And if you all have any questions, we would be happy to answer them.